Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to look at a totally different side of the civil rights movement. This isn't a story about just a few famous faces. No, this one was built from the ground up by, get this, planners, strategists, and a whole lot of teenagers. When we think about the movement, we usually picture this highlight reel, right? Like these huge, iconic moments and famous leaders. And don't get me wrong, that stuff is super important, but it's really only half the story. What was really happening on the ground was this massive grassroots rebellion. And it wasn't random, it was meticulously planned out. And the craziest part? A lot of the people who built it, well, they were probably your age. So to really get how they pulled this off, we have to look past the famous speeches. We've got to see the actual architecture of the protest, the blueprint that was designed in places just like South Carolina. See, these activists weren't just crossing their fingers and hoping for change. No, they were engineers. They had this incredible strategic toolkit, like a 4-part blueprint, specifically designed to attack and dismantle segregation from all sides. Okay, so this right here, this is a roadmap. It shows the 4 key tactics that made up their entire blueprint. We're going to break down every single one, from legal challenges to education to street protests, and finally, hitting them where it really hurts. The wallet. Every single piece was absolutely critical. All right, let's dive in. The first 2 parts of this plan, they weren't about what you'd expect, like marching in the streets. Nope. This fight started in the courthouse and in brand new classrooms. First up, activists decided to use the system against itself. The strategy was super targeted legal action. Think of it like this. They were looking for tiny cracks in the foundation of all these discriminatory laws and just prying them wide open in court. A perfect example is the case of George Elmore. He and his whole community in Waverly took their fight to the courts and literally shattered the foundation of racist voting laws. Their victory was huge. It proved that change was actually possible. But man, it came at a serious personal cost, a stark reminder that this kind of progress demanded incredible sacrifice. But here's the thing, winning in court is one thing. What good is it if people can't actually go out and exercise those new rights? That's where the next part of the blueprint comes in. This is where they turned education itself into a weapon. And this is just genius. This is where Septima Clark comes in. She realized traditional schools weren't the answer. So instead of textbooks, she used things people already had, like a Sears catalog or the form for a driver's license to teach reading and writing. Her citizenship schools were this amazing workaround to those racist Jim Crow literacy tests, and they helped get an estimated 700,000 new voters registered. Just incredible. So now you've got a growing base of empowered voters, you've got these key legal wins. The movement was gaining serious momentum. It was time for the next phase. So let's move out of the courtroom and onto the streets and see how they took the fight straight to public spaces and corporate pocketbooks. Okay, tool number 3, direct action. This is probably what you picture when you think of the civil rights movement, right? The marches, the sit-ins. But here's the key thing to understand. None of it was spontaneous. Just look at this timeline from a protest in Charleston. It shows you exactly how detailed the planning was. This was not chaos. It was a military-grade, highly disciplined operation. For hours on end, 24 teenagers from Burke High School just held their ground peacefully with total dignity right up until the moment of their planned arrest. And that brings us to the 4th and final tactic. This one was all about hitting the system of segregation where it would really, really hurt. Right in the wallet. Okay, and this is where the strategy gets incredibly clever. Check this out. When protesters got arrested, they had a choice. They could pay a fine, right? But that money would just go right back into funding the corrupt system they were fighting. Or they could choose jail. And by refusing bail, they totally flipped the script. They went from being a source of income to a major cost for the city. So you see, the really crucial point here is that this wasn't just a moral stand. It was a brilliant economic move, a squeeze play. By forcing the city to pay to house and feed them in jail, they made segregation expensive. They were literally straining the city's budget and crippling the whole system from the inside out. But all of this strategic brilliance, it was met with just unbelievable violence. In what's now known as the Orangeburg Massacre, the state's response to a peaceful protest wasn't negotiation, it was deadly force. Without any warning, police just opened fire on a crowd of unarmed college students. Most of them were shot in the back while they were trying to run away. 3 young men were killed that day: Henry Smith, Samuel Hammond, Delano Middleton. This horrible tragedy laid bare the brutal, violent reality of what was being used to hold up the system of white supremacy. But the blueprint, the plan, it didn't die in Orangeburg. Not at all. In fact, its legacy is proof that this movement never really ended. Think about it. From those first legal fights back in the 40s, all the way through the sit-ins of the 60s, the fight for justice just kept going. And it's still going. I mean, just this past October, in 2024, a full 64 years after they were arrested, the city of Columbia finally cleared the criminal records of those student activists. So the big takeaway here is that this isn't some closed chapter in a history book. It's a living, breathing thing. It's an ongoing project of justice, and it's still evolving. What this history really shows us is that real lasting change isn't an accident. It's designed, it's built, and so often it's built by the youngest and the bravest people around. Which leaves us with one last really important question. What does the next chapter of the blueprint look like? And who's going to be the one to write it?